Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Forsman, and I'm currently running for a seat on Borough Council in Camp Hill. HMN Media Group has given me this generous opportunity leading up to my election to share my opinions here in their studios, and I couldn't be more grateful. It's funny because someone told me recently that I should start my own podcast, but I honestly didn't consider myself qualified. I even joked and said, what would I even call it? Yet another white guy talks politics? I feel like the market's already saturated with people sharing their unsolicited and barely researched opinions. I just don't feel like adding to the noise. Turns out the name's catchy, though, so I guess I'll use it. A little bit about me. I moved from Detroit to Camp Hill in 2003 for work, and I've been a resident ever since. I've raised 2 children here in the district, and I love living in the borough. Until recently, I worked as an IT network engineer employed by the same company that I moved here for more than 2 decades ago. Just this past month, I was let go because the customer I was responsible for declared bankruptcy, and I can't lie, it stung a bit to be unceremoniously terminated after giving 26 years to the same company. But that's just the way corporate America is these days. All the awards, promotions, and accolades meant nothing. The only thing upper management saw was the salary they could eliminate. Thankfully, I'd started doing volunteer work in early 2024 in an effort to give back to the community. I'd come to the realization that other than paying my taxes, I hadn't really done anything over the last 2 decades to contribute locally. It turns out just showing up and trying to be a positive influence in the community was the best thing I could have done with my free time. In an effort to get outside my comfort zone, I started attending a wide variety of events and initiatives throughout the greater Harrisburg area. And at some point, I started getting asked to run for an elected office myself. I like to joke and say I was peer pressured into running for borough council, but the truth is, while I was working with various campaigns last year, I saw that there was a desperate need for reasonable people to step up and run for office. Many of these positions don't come with a salary, so it's hard to find people with the free time and desire to do the job. If elected, I'll be in a position to help our borough navigate these uncertain times. With the cuts in federal funding and grant money, our community is going to have to find creative ways to fill those gaps. Personally, I think the borough is already well managed, and I plan to support the good work that's already being done. Our primary issues centered around public safety and stormwater management, but we have plans to address outstanding issues with both. One thing about government, though, change comes slowly if you're trying to follow the rules. That said, one thing I do appreciate about our community is that even when issues arise, our residents are pretty reasonable. I sat in on a recent council meeting, and a handful of them showed up to voice their concerns on an issue they felt strongly about. Despite their passion, they were respectful and even mindful of potential budget and manpower concerns. Honestly, I couldn't ask for a better community to represent. I've seen meetings where residents come in and put council on blast too, but they're far more rare. That level of community engagement is what makes local government so great, and it's what makes me so eager to step up and represent the people. Before moving on, I want to take a minute to talk about the judicial retention vote that's on the ballot this year. There's a lot of disinformation flying around out there, and the main thing everyone should know is that you should be voting yes for retention on our justices. If we don't, that will trigger an election which will distract them from doing their jobs as the arbiters of our state's constitution. Unlike the U.S. Supreme Court, we're given a choice every 10 years to decide whether or not our justices should be allowed to continue doing their job on the Supreme Court. I don't really consider these partisan positions, and I don't think our justices enjoy campaigning any more than I do. They'd rather be hearing cases. I'm hoping I can get one of them to come on one of my next shows and talk about the good work they've done over the past decade. Now, let's talk about a national issue. We're coming into another week of the federal government being shut down due to the budget battle, and there are a lot of people out there blaming this on everything but the actual issue that's holding up the budget. The sticking point for getting it passed hinges on the Affordable Care Act's extensions, which helps subsidize health insurance for many people who wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. I hate having to defend the ACA, but as it stands, it's better than nothing. Now, I'll be the first to admit that the ACA as implemented is a flawed bill. It's a handout to insurance companies that gives them taxpayer money to reduce premiums for working-class households. Since being enacted, costs have continued to rise while healthcare executives are earning ridiculous salaries for their hard work keeping them low. For reference, the CEOs of the top American healthcare companies raked in as much as $25 million last year. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like those salaries are unwarranted considering my premiums keep going up. While extending the ACA subsidies won't lower costs, letting them expire is guaranteed to increase them, mainly because these top executives aren't going to accept the pay cut. If we want to address that, we need to adjust the top marginal tax rate and start punishing greed like we did back in the 60s. Despite that glaring flaw, letting these credits expire would be irresponsible without some way to offset the increased costs to the people who will be most affected, those who are already struggling. As someone who's going to have to apply for COBRA soon, it's infuriating to see so many zeros at the end of their paychecks. I just got the paperwork last week, and to continue my coverage, it would cost $1,200 a month to keep my medical and dental. Unemployment in Pennsylvania pays $600 a week, which means half my unemployment checks are going to go to my health care. Add to that my mortgage, which is a little over $1,300 a month, and at the end of the month, I lose $100 before I even pay for groceries and utilities. Obviously, I don't plan on being unemployed forever, but the social safety nets we have in place are barely sufficient. Personally, I'd like to see the Affordable Care Act scrapped and replaced with a true public option. But with the current makeup of Congress and Senate, good luck. In its original form, with a public option to compete with private insurers on their terms, the Affordable Care Act would have been a much stronger bill. I know that I'd have gladly paid for a Medicare for All plan instead of a private insurer. I'd even have been fine with fewer treatment options if it meant paying less. Using the current data, your average public health care recipient costs the American taxpayer around half what private insurance does. And that's not even taking into account that your average Medicare and Medicaid recipients require more care in general than anyone on a private plan. That cost only stands to improve, and the number of people electing to use a public option grows. If private insurance companies are threatened by a system that isn't burdened with top executives whose salaries help keep our premiums high, that's their problem. Now, opponents of healthcare like to cite boogeymen like rationing of care, long wait times, and the like, but that's already happening here in America. The difference is that instead of taking care of those who most in need first, the barriers are economic ones. People who can afford healthcare get quality care, while those who can't use our emergency rooms as their primary care provider. By doing that, they're raising the cost of care for everyone. Wouldn't it be more economical if we just cut out the middleman? I mean, it's already been proven in every industrial country that public health care is more efficient and that these boogeymen are nothing but scare tactics. Why do we refuse to follow their example? It's my personal belief that any industry designed to profit off human suffering shouldn't exist. There are plenty of places where private industry works, but healthcare is just not one of them. The laws of supply and demand stop being relevant when life-sustaining care is involved. Every other country has managed to figure out public health care, but we keep falling back on the myth of American exceptionalism to explain why we can't, despite being the wealthiest country in the world. We need to wake up, say enough's enough, and start pushing back against the idea that private industry is magically more efficient than government. Because in this and many other cases, it just isn't. I know here in America, a statement like that's going to get me labeled a socialist. And so be it. Frankly, we're all socialists here in America, and corporations are the most socialist of all. Most of the protections that the working class Americans rely on today were the product of a massive social movement here in the good old US of A. From the late 19th and into the 20th century, socialists reshaped life for working Americans. The 8-hour workday, workplace safety laws, and even Social Security were all products of this movement. It's disappointing that so many Americans don't know or understand how many people stood up and even died to give us these rights that we take for granted. In the years since, there's been a coordinated campaign to equate socialism with communism, and that's a major issue. The two are not synonymous, and if you like working a 40-hour work week, you should thank a socialist. But anyways, I don't want to dwell on that for too long, as I have a more important message in everything I've been trying to do over these past 2 years. The message is simply this: get outside of your comfort zones. I made a commitment last year to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I spent a lot of time in communities that weren't familiar to me, and it's taught me more in the past year than anything I've learned in decades. One of the most important, however, is that no matter our backgrounds, we all want basically the same things. We just want a better life for our kids than the one we had. We want to live a life of relative comfort without the constant concerns of housing, food, and job insecurity. If all of our disconnected communities got together and started working towards these goals, we could be unstoppable. But it'll never happen if we just stay inside the comfortable little bubbles we've built for ourselves and stay distracted. At the end of the day, we're all human, no matter our race, religion, or gender identity, and that's something we lose sight of all too often. If the way someone chooses to live their life isn't hurting anyone, why should anyone care? I think our diversity as a nation is one of the things that makes us truly great, and I think it should be embraced. For me, the best part of getting outside my personal comfort zone was that it taught me that I have a voice, and my opinions have value. I've lived so long shouting into an echo chamber that I just assumed no one wanted to hear how I felt about the issues we face in this country. Turns out I was just talking to the wrong audience. Over the same period, I've been a party to and a witness of some truly magical moments that I'd have never seen if I hadn't taken those first steps. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of awkwardness and disappointment as well, but all of that pales in comparison to those shiny moments. Being able to share it with others is what makes it truly great, though, and in that spirit, I want to throw one last thing out here. If you're a candidate, elected official, or even a community leader, I've got a few more sessions where I'll be sitting down to talk about issues, and I want to invite you along. I've got some flexibility in timing, but I'd like to give as many people as I can the opportunity to say their piece. So feel free to reach out to me and let's coordinate something. We could talk about your campaign and what motivated you to run, other topics of concern across the state or the nation, or just local initiatives you're working on and what others can do to help. I'm hoping to suggestions here. I guess I'll wrap up on this. Let's try being kinder to each other. Over the past couple of decades, things have gotten so divisive, and I don't know how we're ever going to get anything done as a nation while we're treating each other like evil personified. As candidates and elected representatives, we have a duty not just to the people who vote for us, but all the residents of our respective districts. We'd be wise to keep that in mind. I'm Rich Forsman. I'm running for Campbell Borough Council, and don't forget to vote for me on November 4th.